And we are live. Welcome to Josh and Aaron Talk About Stuff. I am Josh.
And I am Aaron.
How you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, my friend. How are you?
Doing all right. It's weather's turning nice.
For you, maybe
Springtime for
it's
me.
like
Yep.
freaking snowing here, man.
Get to. It should be good enough tomorrow where I can open up the windows
Oh, that'll be
and
rad.
air the old house up. So,
It's always nice. Yeah,
uh,
it's like 40 degrees and like flurrying
yep.
in Oregon because why not? Because it's what it's what it's doing. So
Are you a King Kong Godzilla fan?
I'm sorry, I'm just not. I'm just
Is that
I have like I have another really good friend who's just like such a Godzilla fan, and I'm just like,
Did you see
okay,
the last movie
I think I did.
with the girl from Stranger Things where they fought Ghidorah and
Oh no, I didn't see it.
okay,
Nothing.
because the newest one is coming out at the end of this
I
month.
know. And like 300 with like 2,000 foot King Kong. I'm like, man, they got him a lot bigger because like in the original one, like he's carrying the lady in his hand and she's like the size of a cell phone in his hand. And then this one now he's like as tall as Godzilla, which means he's like 2,000 feet tall. So like
Yeah,
they really
he's
mid him
the
bigger.
Kong from Skull Island. That one they
Yeah.
merged those two together. So
Right.
all
Right.
right, all right. So Aaron gets to tell us about the topics today. So
And actually,
you're up.
that's a great lead in though to my topic.
It is.
It's a really great lead into my topic because last week we were talking about Star Trek and Star Wars,
Yes.
and which are two of my all time favorite things, and it kind of got me thinking. And then I started doing some reading, and it got me thinking about the fact that the kind of the importance of and the relevance of science fiction and fantasy as a genre because it oftentimes gets disregarded, you know. And it set me thinking about it. And I started doing some reading, and one of my favorite authors is a fantasy author, and he's no longer with us sadly, but he left a heck of a body of work. It was Terry Pratchett. He's a British humorous fantasy writer, known for the Discworld series of novels, and there were like 35 of those, and he wrote about half a dozen other novels, and just really prolific. And he passed away about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and but anyway, in an interview with him, and I lost it. I had it, and this what frustrates me. They asked him about fantasy and the power of the genre, and he said, it's sort of, he says the first fantasy stories, they weren't about, it's not, we're not talking about stories that were about dragons and elves. We're talking about a genre that was created to shine light in the darkness when the world was at its coldest,
Right.
or something along those lines. And it really got me thinking. And then, then I read another interview with him where the interviewer was like, it's like, is Mr. Pratchett, why do you write fantasy? You're obviously a very talented writer, and fantasy is oftentimes a really disregarded genre. And his response was, he says, I'm feeling generous and I've had a nice breakfast, which is why you're still alive.
Right.
So I guess my first question to you is simply, what's your general take on that thought, and I've got, and I'll get more specific with you, but just what's your general take on that thought that fantasy and science fiction can really be a light or a mirror to our current, our reality.
Um, I think that sci-fi and fantasy genre, whether it's books or movies, show either socially something that we're uncomfortable with that can be displayed in a non-threatening way as
Mhm.
far as like fantasy goes,
That's a great way
because
of
there's a
saying it,
lot
though.
of like, I guess you call racism in like
Yeah, I
fantasy
guess there
with
really
like
is,
Lord of
isn't
the
there?
Rings. There's
Oh my gosh,
dwarves
yeah,
and
there
there
really
elves,
is.
and so it's like it's just a different way to kind of like I mean like Star Wars is basically was like a like related to the Vietnam War or something like that. I think
Hmm.
George Lucas was saying
Doesn't surprise me.
or something like that. Sci-fi on their hand shows me at least the all the good we can really get out of technology, but if we take it too far, how bad it can turn.
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's just like people that disregard the power of science fiction, I think, are really disregarding just how poignant that speculative nature can be.
I
You
mean,
know,
have you seen Terminator?
right?
You
No,
know?
even ones that seem like over the top and silly and ridiculous. You know, come with me if you want to leave. You know,
Yeah,
I do want to leave. I will come
right.
with you. You know, but it's like, you know, or even the Matrix films,
Yeah.
which have this kind of this look at who we are and what we the dangers of what we can become. So absolutely, so that's just kind of the first thing. Like they really, like I said, what set me off on thinking about it was last week when you were talking about Star Trek, though, because with the original Star Trek that Roddenberry did back in the '60s, right? Um, it was really socially uncomfortable for people. Like at
Hmm.
times, there was some stuff he was doing that really made people socially uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, So I think that's the power of the genre. And like for instance, Terry Pratchett, who like I said I love, he's very very funny, brilliantly witty guy, but his stuff really touches on politics in a way that I don't think is easy to do
Right.
when when you're trying to you rely on, and here's the problem though, you rely on your reader to get it, or you rely on your viewer to get it. How often do you think it gets lost? How often do
Yeah,
you
a
think the
lot.
message get lost? I mean,
Right.
truly. um think about the Avatar film, the with the
Oh,
blue
I was.
people,
It was like, hey, I've seen this movie before
right? Yeah,
in the history books, but I
right.
mean, I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, but that's me, and not some people might not have got the
Right.
what he was trying to show there.
Yeah, you wonder how often how often does the message get lost? And I think
Right.
that's the that's the danger. And I guess that brings me to the question, so why do you think the genre gets so discounted sometimes?
Okay. Side note, I think a lot of brilliant artists, whether in the medium of books, music, or movies,
Hmm.
a lot of their messages get lost because of the way that it's presented. Point in fact, or case in point, uh, the song by the Beach Boys, Wouldn't It Be Nice? If you
Right.
really read the lyrics, you know what it's about, but you can't come out and say it that way in the 1960s. So we have to
No.
be very clever about how we present things. All right,
We
anyway.
have to be so coy. But no, that's a
Okay.
great point though. No, but let's pause though, because then is it the job of the artist, or is it the job of the listener to find the message? I mean,
Both. Like,
both. I
it
mean, the
can't be so obscure that only like three
right.
people are going to understand. Because the artist wants to get a message out regardless of how they
Absolutely.
get it out, right? But if
Right.
you're too overt,
If you're too obscure, then
right,
their message is completely lost.
right. But
I
people
admit.
also don't want the phrase today. I don't want to shove it in my face all the time. That's the other
Right. I love that.
extreme
Yeah,
that
right.
you run the risk if you're too overt. So,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I speaking of artists, they love the art or hate the art, not the artist, whatever that phrase is.
I know what you mean, though.
That bugs me. Like, uh, like Bruce Springsteen is, I would say, he's a Democrat, he's a liberal, and he's
Yeah, right.
all the songs are about the working man and whatever. But
Right.
like people that like him, oh, I love his music stuff, but I don't really agree with his politics. Well, then you don't really like Bruce Springsteen. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
It's like I think I mean I mentioned it to you countless times, but it's just like it's my favorite. It's my favorite of all time in this situation. And we're going off topic a little bit,
yeah,
but it's on topic, off topic, and it's I used to like Rage Against the Machine until they got political. Oh, what
mm,
machine do you think they were
yeah. Have
raging
you ever
against all
read the
this time? The
lyrics?
dishwasher?
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean,
Like,
they're not, but and so the message can't. But so we bring it back around to what we were talking about. The message can't get lost. We don't want the
right.
message to get lost. Behind the curtain, if
Yeah.
you will.
So
So
the original question was, why do I think sci-fi and fantasy aren't like respected as much? I
respected,
guess.
yeah.
Okay. Um, I think it's like if people grow up and they lose their imagination of being a kid. Kids' imaginations run wild, and I think we lose that. And so, like, I think I'm a big kid. Like I love that stuff, right?
Oh yeah, me too. You know, I'm the
And
biggest kid, so
I don't know why it's turned in such a to like well, you're a nerd if you like this stuff, but like
right.
there's writing a book, no matter what genre, there's talent.
Absolutely.
No disrespect to the guy that lives here, The Notebook, those books.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Is it really that difficult to write a book like that, or to write the novel series like Game of Thrones? That's crazily complex. Like it's
Absolutely. I mean,
and
so
not everything has to be the Scarlet Letter. And like,
right.
who wants to read that anyway?
Well, and there's also the fact that there's this notion that somehow somehow reality makes it more worthwhile. So you're telling me that the Notebook, we're going to use that example, the
Sorry
Notebook.
if anybody likes it.
Yeah,
I'm not
sorry, everybody.
disrespecting the talent, just the
Absolutely not.
content.
Just saying. But the Notebook has more literary value than the works of I don't know, Ray Bradbury,
Right.
who
Or
wrote
J.R.R.
in
Tolkien.
J.R.R. Tolkien because they wrote in the science fiction and fantasy genre.
Right.
I mean, Bradbury is a whole other story. I mean,
Yeah.
Bradbury is a genius of American letters. And he wrote one of my favorite books of all time is by Bradbury, and it's called Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is actually
Because the movie
borrowing.
terrified me
Yeah, I couldn't watch the movie
as a
when it came
kid.
out because I just could not watch that movie. But I read the book and I just adored the book. And comes from the quote from Macbeth. It's the three witches by the pricking of my thumbs. Something wicked this way comes. 'Tis
Right.
Macbeth. So, but this book has an incredible power about it, and an incredible and Bradbury focused a lot on one of his main topics was coming of age, was growth, was maturity, growing
Yeah.
up, and it's an incredible book that you can shine a lens through to do that. And so it just strikes me as such a strange thing in our society where we instantly disregard so many works
Right.
because they've got that genre label on them. Now, here's the thing. I think a part of the reason is because of the genre itself. And this is going to bring me back to what you said about the Notebook. Sorry. You know, the Notebook is realistic fiction, I guess you call it, and we instantly want to provide. We instantly want to say that realistic fiction somehow has more worth, or many people do. I think, and I think it's like, are you, and it comes. It's I think science fiction has got this notion of being fluff. Fantasy has got this notion of being fluff, and undoubtedly there is some science fiction and fantasy that is fluff. You know, but that doesn't make the whole genre fluff
But just think
by
about like
any
the
stretch.
innovation of these science fiction authors
Oh my
or
gosh,
fantasy that create these entire worlds. Harry
absolutely.
Potter, Game of Thrones,
You know,
Robert Jordan's series, The Wheel of Time. Like you can't just you have to like research regular society in order to actually create a world that people
yeah,
can actually like live in. Like
you are creating a world. Like that's a great point. Go ahead. I'll let you
no,
finish
I'm
what
just
you're
saying
saying.
like with science fiction, like the Expanse novels that are a TV show and the books.
Yeah, they're
Like you
massive.
can't just like and they made it as real as possible. I like the way that they explain how the spaceships actually
Yeah, it's
travel.
very realistic science fiction.
Like you have to actually do some research before you start writing that
Absolutely.
stuff down. And it takes like a long time to like create the foundation of the world. Like the first Game of Thrones book, it took him like 5 years to write. You
Absolutely.
know what I'm
And
saying?
that's
So
yeah.
it bugs me that like it's boils down. Well, you're a nerd or you're a geek or or I love it. It's like finding a book. Well, I don't like it. Well, how do you know if you've ever actually read
Yeah.
something that's like just totally different than the normal everyday love stories or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, and they have that stuff in science fiction too. The
Absolutely.
only thing that makes it science fiction is just some of the technology is either out of reach or completely invented.
And
But
the only
people in
thing
the future in these books still deal with all the crap that we deal with today.
yeah. The only thing in fantasy, it's a world that doesn't exist. That has doesn't to our knowledge doesn't exist. The
Right.
multiverse, who
Hey,
knows?
why do you think fantasy books, most of them, are reflections of like the medieval world? Why is that a thing?
I think that now see there we go. That okay, for one, that's Tolkien. I think that
You
that
started
really
it, and so now we're all
I think I think that's Tolkien, but I think there's this romanticization. Oh man,
Yes.
I butchered that
That,
word.
I
You know
think
the word
that's
I'm talking
correct.
about, though.
Yes. It was
Yeah,
romanticized that
there's
time
this.
period, which
Yeah,
it
there's
shouldn't be. It was
it was a
awful
horrible
for a
time
lot
to
of people.
live, but that's what we've done. We've romanticized that era, that
Right.
that time frame of, and I think that also is then I think what draws people away from it is this romanticizing of this one time and elves and dragons and things like that. And then that brings me back to what Pratchett said in that quote. And it's like ignore the elves and the dragons. We're putting a
That's
light
not the
where there's
point.
that's not the point. We're putting a light where there's darkness in a way to try and understand
Right.
something that we can't understand. I think probably the best no matter what anyone, and I'm not even going to go into this, regardless of what anyone thinks about her personal politics, Rowling with the Harry Potter novels did something unbelievable in being able to go cross spectrum in terms of her readership, and then in terms of her scope and her genre. And she did something rather amazing that does, I don't think, happen very often, where she did manage to pull in people from all walks and scopes and say, see, look, this can be really cool.
I just
So
finished reading the fifth book. So it's really cool. And like, of course, authors get better as they write, but like the good fantasy and science fiction authors, you're right there with them in the action.
they transport you
Like
somewhere.
I'm there. And I just feel like a lot of people, the release of people working in their jobs is always in my mind goes to like sports. I gotta go release, it's a
Yeah.
release from my work. Pick up a book, man, and you're in a whole new world.
Read
You
a
know what I mean?
book. Yeah, no,
Like,
absolutely.
or even just watch a TV series. Like, I know TV is different, but like, the book is always better. 99.9 infinity% of the time. But like,
Yeah.
exp- explore your horizons. Like
Yeah,
sci-fi. Like, I don't think there's anybody who hasn't benefited from technology. You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Absolutely.
But it can also be bad for us. And if you
Right.
watch the TV show on Netflix, Black Mirror. Yeah, that's what happens when technology goes too far. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or just like, but I think I feel like fantasy and sci-fi are, if not making a comeback, they're much more acceptable now than they used to be. And like, even
Yeah.
as niche as Star Trek is, I would guarantee that most everybody on the planet, at least in American culture, has heard of Captain Kirk
Right.
or the word Star Trek. So
Or the word Star
even though
Trek.
not everybody likes it, people know it. But like,
Yeah. No,
there's
and that's
something
the
there
thing.
is something for everybody in those two genres. You
Absolutely.
just have to like find it. Like
I think there's a.
fantasy, go ahead.
I was just say, I just think I think really there's in the end there's like almost this fear of embracing it. Like, I don't want to be
Uh-huh.
that. I don't want to be that person who reads fantasy. It's like,
Right.
it's okay to be that
It's
person
not,
that
and
reads.
most of it's written at a higher level than your
Yeah.
normal. Like, love Stephen King, but his books aren't written at like a super high level when they don't need
No.
to be. You don't need to
No.
be deciphering a manuscript to like
No. Not everything
read it,
has to.
understand it, but like it
Right.
generally at a written higher level. And I don't know if that turns people off, like subconsciously. Like, man, I don't really
Good.
understand. Like, I just read this alternate history book called Early Riser.
Okay.
It takes place in Wales, actually, because the he's an English writer. But
Oh, okay.
I'm reading it and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't understand. But once you get past some of like the terms and how the author writes it, then you start to like, oh, but you just got to like push through that barrier. Because like when
Yeah.
I first started reading Game of Thrones, I was like, I'm not really sure I can handle the way he writes. But
It's
then
heavy.
you get used to it.
Like, it's weighty.
Yeah. But and I'm sure anyone that watched Game of Thrones, if they didn't stop watching it, they liked it for the
Yeah.
most part. But like the books are better. Read the books anyway. Yeah, I think sci-fi is at least. I mean, who hasn't seen like fantasy is still like the Marvel movies. I'm sorry, that's fantasy.
Yeah.
So in those movies, it's insane. So I don't know if it's like movies and TV shows people are more willing to watch than
I think
reading the
so.
books. But read a book.
you know, read a book. You know, it's good for you. It's good for your brain. And I
It
think that
really
we're seeing,
is.
and I think that, we're seeing I don't feel like it's as bad. There's sort of an embracing, like you said, steadily of these two genres that have always kind of always been outliers in a way, um, kind of disregarded. But I think more and more people are kind of looking to them, and I in the end think I look to them because, they provide an escape,
Mm-hmm.
but they provide a thoughtful escape,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the hands of the best writers or the best storytellers, because it could be TV too. The
Right.
best storytellers, the filmmakers, the best writers. They give you this, they give you this wonderful escape with these two
Yeah.
genres. But
And that
it's an
societal stuff, they're very subtle at throwing in
yeah,
there, and the
like, oh
mask
hey,
of orcs and elves. But
yeah, okay, this has got something to say. So
yep, cool.
cool.
All right. Tune in Friday for the next topic. All right. See you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Bye.